In episode 161 of the Guitar Music Theory podcast, I answer more listener questions about Hot for Teacher, Multitracks, bass rigs, Funk 49, and more. Greetings, guitar engineers. Welcome to the Guitar Music Theory podcast. If you're captivated by the magic of guitar music and eager to unravel the mysteries of music theory, you're in the right place. I'm Desi Serna, your host, fellow guitar enthusiast, and author of Fretboard Theory, Guitar Theory for Dummies, Guitar Picking Mechanics, and more. In each episode of this podcast, I delve into the fascinating world of guitar and music theory, demystifying complex concepts and providing practical insights to help you become a more informed, skilled guitarist. Together, we'll explore chord progressions, scales, improvisation techniques, and more, unlocking the secrets that make guitar music an irresistible art. Today, in episode 161, I answer listener questions about Hot for Teacher, Multitracks, bass rigs, Funk 49, mastering songs, major and minor pentatonic, caged chord forms, finger and hand soreness, and the song Nights of Cydonia by Muse. It's going to be a great discussion, but before we get started, what should you specifically be working on right now in order to become a better guitarist? Go to my website, guitarmusictheory.com. Answer the question I ask you about your playing, and I'll send you free custom video instruction that's calibrated to your current level. Whether you're still a beginner needing to learn the basics, or you need help with bar chords, finger picking, guitar soloing, or understanding music theory, I have a free course for you. I can provide you with a plan to put you on track to fill gaps in your playing so you can move forward and reach your music goals. Enroll in your free video course now at guitarmusictheory.com. You can click on the link in the podcast show notes. All right, episode 161 Q&A starts in just a moment. All right, we are ready to dive into our first question. It comes from Steve, and he asks, Desi, given your expertise, would you be able to tell if the following guitar solo is improvised or not? And then he provided me a link to this guitar solo. All right, so it goes on. This is obviously Hot for Teacher by Van Halen. And was that improvised or not? Well, my guess is that Eddie may have played around with the solo for a while, got a basic roadmap together, perhaps worked out a few things, and maybe improvised some other parts. He probably recorded several takes and then chose his favorite take, or perhaps he edited the solo to combine parts from different takes. This is what usually happens in the studio. So keep in mind that even if Eddie did, quote, improvise some parts of this solo, that he would be drawing from years of experience playing many, many songs and working things out, and he had quite a vocabulary of licks and phrases and ideas that he was already familiar with. So, I don't know. I don't know if he put a lot of time into it or if it was something that was very spontaneous. But in either case, even if it was spontaneous after years of years of experience. And you know that Eddie Van Halen was considered like a child prodigy. He played piano, and his parents taught him, classical piano, and took him to piano competitions and stuff, and he would, win those and had a lot of training and formal training and that. And then when he started playing music, he and his brother basically just played in cover bands and would just learn all the popular rock songs and stuff. And Eddie was even singing them. And so even when Van Halen first got started, they were essentially a cover band. And before they even recorded their first album, he had years of experience where he had learned many, many songs. I remember hearing an audio interview with Van Halen talking about Eric Clapton's influence on him. And Eddie started playing parts from Crossroads by Cream featuring Eric Clapton, the live version. And I was surprised how closely Eddie was playing the solos from that. Like, he obviously had listened to that recording, had worked out those solos and those parts and had practiced them. And I'm sure he did that with many, many other songs, just like all guitar players do. And so, he learned how to guitar solo, learned how to improvise, learned the techniques, learned the moves, and then, did that with many, many songs, I'm sure, played a bunch of covers for a long time. And then let's not, overlook the fact that I do think that Eddie Van Halen was a musical genius. I think that his talent was just far above what I have or what your average guitar player has, even your average good guitar player. So there was some special talent and brilliance in there as well. So if you're listening to a guitar solo like that and you're wondering, how do I get to that point? Well, you need to consider, how did Eddie Van Halen get to that point? He didn't take any shortcuts. He learned a lot of music. In some cases, he worked out solos note for note. I've heard him do that. And in other cases, I'm sure he put a lot of thought into it. And you got to think about the whole process that happens, the whole recording process that happens in the studio. While on occasion, someone might have a magical moment where something was completely spontaneous and they captured something, legendary. Typically, guitarists would really spend a lot of time working things out. They would get input from the other band members, input from an engineer, input from producers. There would be multiple takes, and they would really work on kind of refining their ideas and getting something that was good enough to be in the final recording. Maybe you're not a recording artist like that, but as you're working on your own guitar playing, you're going to need to follow the same process. So record yourself, with an audio recording program, or make videos on your phone, or whatever it takes. Listen back, find those areas of your playing that don't sound so good. Figure out how you can change things up, sharpen things up, and set goals to learn certain songs or perform certain songs. Maybe you don't have an opportunity to perform them with a band, in a live setting, but you're going to perform them with tracks or something, and you're just going to record, on your own or something. But, you got to set goals. You got to learn material. You got to go through that process of practicing learning things, practicing things, recording things, critiquing your playing, re-recording things, refining your playing. That's how everyone gets good. And so think about how you can follow a similar process as you work on your own guitar playing. Moving on, this next question comes from Mitch, and he says, in the Christian music arena, I can get backing multitracks for popular Christian music. Is there a good resource for classic rock pop music that I can purchase, download multitracks to play with? I have found a few that are poor quality resources, but I want to find a reliable site with good quality multitracks. These are called stems. Churches use this a lot, where modern worship music is made available to them in multitrack formats so that they can isolate the parts to learn them. It's just to better facilitate, preparing for Sunday morning services. Or sometimes worship bands might add in some extra instrumentation or extra vocals just to fill things out. This happens in the pop and rock and other genres as well. But I'm familiar with what he's talking about because I played at church for years, and we often use stems, as they're called. So I'm not aware of a website that offers that for just regular, secular music, whatever you want to call it. So if I have any listeners that are familiar with what he's talking about and could recommend a resource, I suppose I could have spent some time Googling this. But I'll tell you what I do, though. I use a website called karaoke-version.com, karaoke-version.com. And they not only sell karaoke tracks, but they sell guitar backing tracks, drum backing tracks, bass backing tracks. So I pulled up the website. I went to the guitar tab. I looked at some of their top guitar tracks. One of them was What's Up by Four Non Blondes. This is what it sounds like. They give you a little sample of it. And then I can go through here. I could take the electric guitar out or the acoustic guitar out, and I just got vocals, drums, and bass. I can take the vocals out as well. You know, I could just solo the drums if I want. So they do allow you to customize and download custom MP3 backing tracks, and it's inexpensive. It's usually a few dollars for a track. So you might want to check this website out. And if you really wanted to, I don't know if they allow you to actually just split all the tracks in your download or not. I'm logged in. I have an account. I'm looking at some tracks that I purchased in the past. For example, I purchased Brick House by the Commodores. That I wanted a bass backing track. I wanted to play the bass along with it. So I can download a version without the bass, with vocals, or without vocals. I can download a full version, or I can download just the bass. But it doesn't actually allow me to download the multi-track. However, there's kind of a way around this because they make tracks available for different instruments. So I could pay a few extra dollars per track and get the bass backing track, drum backing track, guitar backing track, something like that, and just drop, since whenever you buy the backing track, one of the downloads they give you is that particular instrument by itself, so you can hear just that part. Well, I could drop those all into an audio program, and now I've got it split into multi-tracks. So that's usually what I do. There may be some better resources out there for this sort of thing. So if any of my listeners have a better suggestion, let me know. Someone might mention a program like Moises, Moises, where you can, import an MP3, and it tries to separate instruments by frequency range and stuff, so you can isolate tracks and then you can export that way. You can do that. It's not perfect because it can't perfectly separate the instruments, but I do use that on occasion for some things, so that might be something worth looking into also. All right, next question. This comes from Ted, and he says, I am a hobby bass player. I am at the point where I can jam with friends or fellow hobby players, but my equipment is likely obsolete. I have a 50-watt trainer amp, which is not too heavy to carry, but I am thinking that there are options that would work better for me for small jam sessions. Can you recommend a basic setup that is more portable? I am somewhat clueless about gear. I have enough challenges in learning to play the bass! ! Well, Ted, it might surprise you to know that I am also clueless about bass gear, a lot of it at least, specifically when it comes to amps. I always run my bass direct to the PA, either using a Kemper profiling amplifier or a Tech 21 Sans amp, or sometimes just a plain DI. And then I might put a compressor in front of it. And I usually always play bass at church. I actually play more bass at church than I do guitar, just because I enjoy it. I'm good at it. And we usually have more than enough guitar players, but we're always short on bassists. So I just told my church a long time ago, I don't mind playing bass. And so they use me quite a bit on bass. And then I will monitor with in-ear monitors. We have like an AVM system or something like that. Now, when I've played bass for other things like pop and rock gigs, and that, I would use my Kemper, and then I would use the Kemper cab so that if it were a situation where I didn't have in-ears, I could just hear the cabinet, and then I went direct to the PA. So I've never actually used a real bass cabinet. I almost always went to direct to the PA using a direct box, and then I would monitor with a monitor wedge or with in-ears, or lately with the Kemper cab if I'm using the Kemper. So that's kind of the extent of my knowledge. If you really want to learn more about combo amps for bass or something like that, probably just contact a retailer, Guitar Center or Sweetwater or American Music Supply or something like that, and just see what their recommendations are, see what the popular amps are. But since you brought this up, I thought I would demonstrate a couple of my bass rigs. So I have a little mini pedal board here, a Pedal Train Nano Plus, and I have a SansAmp Bass Driver DI by Tech 21, and that just emulates like a bass amp sound and just gives it more tone and a better feel and everything. And then I have a Diamond bass compressor that I put before that, and that just kind of compresses the signal, and I like the way that sounds and feels. I have a tuner pedal on there. I also have an overdrive pedal. It's a carbon overdrive pedal by Brown Amplification. And that was given to me by Jacob Lowery, who's kind of a A-list bass session player here in the Nashville area. And I figure, okay, if he's giving this to me, maybe I need to try it out. And sometimes I might use that to just thicken up the bass sound a little bit, or maybe give it, like by making it a little dirtier, it kind of thickens it up and can make it sound a little bit more powerful. But I usually don't use it. I'm playing a jazz-style bass. It's called an Eldorado. It's made by Bluesman Vintage Guitars. Here's the bass direct to my computer without any of these pedals. And then here's with the SansAmp on. Here's with the compressor on. And here's the overdrive. Let's put that on and see what happens. I typically don't use that. And you might you might hear that on the bass and go, ooh, that doesn't sound good. It's breaking up too much. It sounds too distorted. But actually, it can sound quite interesting in a mix where you don't notice it. It doesn't sound like it's been distorted. It sounds like sometimes it helps it cut more, believe it or not. There's something about just more audio information that can make the bass sound fuller in the mix, and you don't perceive it as being overdrive. So, but typically, I don't do that. I just use the SansAmp, and I use the Diamond compressor. So let me try playing along with the track so you can hear it with the track. This is actually a track for Brown Eyed Girl that I got from karaoke-version.com. So let's see what it sounds like here. All right, now I'm going to pause this recording, and I'm going to switch my bass over to my Kemper profiling amplifier, because sometimes I use that for the bass. And let's see what that sounds like. All right, so I'm now plugged into the Kemper. And that's actually a profile of a Fender Bassman amplifier that I had for guitar. And I thought, well, since that was originally intended to be used as a bass amp, would it work as a bass amp? And it does. And so I just added some EQ and everything. And this works well. And I use this live sometimes. And sound guys think it sounds good. And it works well. And it feels good. Let's hear it with the track. Here it is with the track. So that's what it sounds like. So that's what I use for my bass rig. In both cases, it's direct. It goes direct to the PA. And again, I'm going to monitor in a wedge monitor. They'll just give me some of it in the wedge. Or if we have in-ears, I've got it directly in my ears. Or with the Kemper, I could bring the Kemper cabinet and I'd have a cabinet on stage. We are moving right along. Ted says, I watched your lesson on Funk 48 about 20 times. It's great. I have a Boss Katana Air practice amp. Any suggestions on which settings to use to get a similar sound? Good question, but first of all, you're referring to the song Funk number 49 by the James Gang. That was Joe Walsh's first band before he went solo and then later played with the Eagles. But actually, there is a song by the James Gang called Funk number 48, lesser known, but you can look it up. This is Funk number 48. Anyway, we're talking about Funk 49, the one that goes like this. And the question is, how can he dial in a similar sound on the Boss Katana Air? Well, first of all, I believe that song was recorded on a Telecaster, so I'm playing a Telecaster right now. Bridge position. So on your Katana Air, I would probably use the Crunch amp type. Start with the gain, the volume, and the EQ all straight up at noon, and then probably adjust the gain from there to see if you need to clean it up or make it a little dirtier. I would turn off all the effects except for the reverb and put that at about 10 o'clock. That should be a good starting point. Make sure you use the bridge position on your guitar, a Telecaster, if you have one. So I dialed up a Tweed Deluxe, a Fender Tweed Deluxe amp profile on my Kemper here. And so this is what I might use. So here it is. And I could try some dirtier things. Let's see what I got here. Whoop. That delay is getting in the way. There's another delay in there. Oh, let me turn that off. Okay, let's keep going. I got some different presets saved from different profiles of this Fender Tweed Deluxe amp. I like the sound of that. That feels good. There's a cool part later that comes in and goes like this. And I went to a setting with more gain, and I put some delay on there. Classic Joe Walsh. I love it. I love the James Gang. So when I was a teenager, first discovering guitar and getting into it, my best childhood friend was also playing guitar. And his parents were like, I don't know, former hippies or something. I went over to his house, and his parents had like hundreds of records. And so we found all this killer old music, including the James Gang. And we just fell in love with it, and we loved Joe Walsh. And, well, the rest is history. Next, I want to share a testimonial that I received. This comes from Jeremy. And he says, hey, I'm sure you get this all the time. However, I feel compelled to let you know how much I appreciate your instruction. Before I found your course, I had been looking for the type of information you provided for literally years. The most helpful things related to music as it is written, but I hadn't found anything that specifically related that information to the guitar, which is what I wanted to play. I first found your podcast, and since that moment, I have listened to every single episode. Some concepts did not translate until I bought your video set. Once I could see the extra materials you provided and watch the content within the course, my whole understanding of music and of the guitar broke wide open, and now I can play just about anything I want, or at least a version of it that sounds recognizable. Thank you, Desi, for the work. The work you do has brought so much joy to my life, and without you, I would still be stuck strumming bar chords and noodling endlessly. Ha ha. Actually, before your course, I was actually in a band for a time and could play most rhythm guitar parts, but for the better part of 10 years, that was the best I could do. So thank you, Desi, for bringing joy to my life, and I'm sure the lives of so many others. No need to reply. I just wanted to thank you personally and let you know the profound impact you have had upon my musical existence. Wow. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing that. That means a lot to me. You know, I wouldn't be doing what I do if I didn't have a passion for it, and if I didn't care about it and genuinely want to help others. So it really, it makes my day when I receive testimonials like this. And thank you so much for the feedback, and thank you for being a customer, and thank you for purchasing the video version of Fretboard Theory. The books are great, but you're right. There's I can go into a lot more depth in the video, and there's being able to hear and see everything in action is just something that is just an added benefit that you just don't get from the book. So the rest of you, if you have not purchased a book or a video course, give it a try. I think that you might have the same experience that Jeremy did here, and you could probably find yourself advancing quicker than you ever did before. I think you'll get your money's worth out of it. And plus, it's a great way that you can support what I do here. If you regularly tune into the podcast, but you haven't really spent much money, the best thing you can do to financially support this content that I create is just purchase something. Buy a video course. If you're on the fence about something, just buy it anyway and consider it your donation. But I bet once you get access to it, you're going to find that that you get a lot out of it and you really enjoy it. All right, next I want to move on to more questions. I got questions about learning and playing songs, questions about scale patterns, questions about caged chord shapes, and more. All right, so we are continuing with today's Q&A. This message comes from Kim and says, many of your instructional videos inform us that we do not have to master the song we are working on now. What does that mean? I get to the point where I can play through most of the song but struggle with certain licks or rhythms. At times I hit a roadblock with the timing or the phrasing. I am more than thrilled to play most of the song and have it sound like what I hear, but that extra step at times seems elusive. My question is, how should I know it's time to move on? Playing the same song over and over is fun, but I need to keep my learning path moving along. Well, exactly. You want to move along. You're not really, as you're learning songs, and by the way, this is something that I really encourage my students to do. So whether you're just getting started with the basics and using the so-called cowboy chords, or you're working with bar chords, or you're learning finger picking, or you're learning guitar solos, you have to actually build a repertoire. You have to learn how to play along with songs and play songs. But depending on where you are, your level, you're not going to be able to master a song. So like if you're just a beginner and you're playing along with your first songs using basic open chords, you're not really going to be able to master anything. You don't have the experience and the touch and the timing and the feel to play anything at a master level. What you want to do, though, is make progress with the song, get the most basic part down, be able to mostly play along with it and follow the chord changes and stay in time with the music and follow the form of the song. And then you want to move on, because you will refine your playing gradually over time as you play more and more songs. So you don't want to get hung up on one particular song and think, I've got to master this before I move on and try anything else. That's just unrealistic. That's not how it works. If you're working on guitar soloing and you've learned a guitar solo, it's likely that there's some techniques in there that are just a little too difficult for you to play expertly or smoothly now. Your timing might be off. You may struggle to execute some of the, techniques and stuff like that. So first of all, if you're new to soloing, well, make sure you pick solos that are simple and easy. Don't pick something that's too difficult. Cut some corners if you need to. Simplify it. Slow the music down. Slow the track down. Do the best job that you can. And then move on to something else. And over time, as you do this with more and more solos, your playing is going to get better and better as you bend strings more and use hammer-ons and pull-offs and coordinate your hands and work on your picking schemes and stuff. That's something that's going to improve gradually over time as you do it more and more. You're not going to be able to start with your first guitar solo and master the skill of guitar soloing with one solo. You might be able to pick a super simple solo and get it down good enough. Maybe it sounds pretty close to the original, but you're not going to master guitar soloing in one solo. So just, pace yourself, realize that you're in this for the long haul, and that you're going to, whatever your goal is, whatever you're working on, whatever the technique or style is, that you are going to work on building a repertoire and you're going to play lots and lots of songs. That's how everybody gets good. That's how I got good. I played tons of songs, then I got into cover bands, then I had to learn all these songs and practice them, and then I played night after night, night after night, playing these songs over and over and over and over, and that's how I really developed my skills and got to where I am today. All right, next, this message comes from John, and he says, I'm a beginner. I want to play my own music. I don't want to learn songs. What approach do you recommend for me? Well, John, my recommendation for you would be learn songs. You're not going to have any skills to play your own music until you can build a decent repertoire of songs and see how others play them. When it comes to any creative endeavor, the best way that you get involved is you first learn how to copy something. You imitate in order to eventually create. As you learn songs, you don't need to learn everything that's happening in every song. You could just focus on the basic parts. These basic parts are the types of parts you'll later use to create your own music. As you learn songs, you're going to get your skills in order. You're going to develop your ear. You're going to get to know song keys and song forms and common chord progressions and chord voicings and melodies and riffs and all of this stuff you need to know if you want to compose your own music. Most of the most famous singers, songwriters that we know of all started out learning songs. You hear stories about Paul McCartney, how he just learned songs. His father would teach him songs and he would just play songs and entertain people. When the Beatles started out, they were just a cover band. So was the Rolling Stones. So was the Grateful Dead. So was Led Zeppelin. So were, Van Halen. All of these people learned how to play music first. So I think it's unrealistic to think that you're going to skip that and go straight to being this super creative musician that composes all this original music. Like, what do you know about music? What playing skills do you have? Like none, So you need to work on developing that first, and you have to do that by playing songs. If you don't like that, I've had students that just said, I don't want to play songs. I don't like to learn songs. I don't like to do that. I don't want to learn. I want to practice. And I'm just told them, well, I don't think you're cut out to play music or be a songwriter. Like, good luck with that. If you don't love music, if you don't love to learn it and study it and practice it, you're not going to get any good at it. Go to the website and I can help you with this, and I can give you some song recommendations and that sort of thing. But we're moving on for now. Next question is about scales. Dan says, I have a quick question regarding the 5 pentatonic scale shapes. I appreciate that shapes 1 and 2 represent the minor and major pentatonic scales, but I'm searching for the purpose of shapes 3, 4, and 5. Since they don't have a minor or major sound to them, like shapes 1 and 2, is their purpose to only help find the scale notes more easily when playing on different parts of the neck? Dan, the shapes are all the same scale. Pentatonic scale notes are scattered all over the neck. So, for example, here's E minor pentatonic. And you guys can't see me play right now, but I can play those same notes in different positions and in different patterns. So the notes are scattered all over the fretboard, and we just want to get to know the location of all the available notes. This is E minor pentatonic. Penta means 5 tonics, or 5 tones, 5-tone scale. E, G, A, B, D, E, G, A, B, D, E, G, A, B, D, and so on. They're all over the fretboard. So we just go position to position, and we memorize where all the notes, related notes, are in that position, and we get these different patterns. And if you start in what most people know as pentatonic pattern 1, well, okay, you're starting on your root E, and then you play through those notes, E, G, A, B, D. Well, if you start in the next position, you're not starting on E, you're starting on G, but whatever, it's still the same notes. G, A, B, D, E, G, A, B, D, E, and so on. If I go to the next position, okay, I'm not starting on E anymore, I'm starting on A, but whatever, I'm still playing the same groups of notes. So any one of the patterns could be major or minor depending on how you're applying it. E minor pentatonic goes with an E minor chord and songs in E minor. But the very same notes could also be G major pentatonic, because I've got a G, a B, and a D in the scale, so I can build a G chord. And I could use the scale with G being its tonic pitch, then you hear the notes from G to G instead of E to E. Depends on what I'm playing over. If I'm playing over music in E minor, well, your ear's going to hear the scale E to E. If you're playing over music in G major, well, your ear's going to hear the same notes, but they're going to hear G as the tonic pitch, so they're going to hear the scale G to G. Since all the patterns use the same notes, any one of them could be major or minor depending on what you're playing over. So let me use my looper here and play a little progression, maybe some E minor. So there's some E minor. Now I'll just play through the notes of the scale. Where do we hear this resolving? E. Why do we hear resolving there? Because I'm playing over an E minor chord. But if I do the same thing with a G chord here, now if I were going to end here, where do we hear it resolving? G. Why? Because I'm playing over G major chords, or our ear is hearing G as the tonic in the scale. Same pattern, same notes. That's the difference between major and minor, and that's true in every single pattern or position. They're all minor or major, depending on what you're playing over. So might not be a bad idea as you learn the pentatonic patterns, eventually, to know where's the minor root, where's the major root. When I go to pentatonic pattern 2, it starts on G, so you might think, oh, this is the G major pentatonic, but the pattern before it starts on E, so that's the E minor pentatonic. The truth is, they're both the same scale. They both use the same notes. And you can use any one of them, any one of the 5 patterns in E minor or G major, because it doesn't really matter actually where you start playing on the fretboard. Like, you might think, oh, that's G major because I'm starting on the G. But if I'm playing over an E minor chord, you don't hear it that way. You hear it as notes of E minor. So in pattern 1, I know that here's my minor root, and then here's my major root. In pattern 2, I know that here's my major root, but I also know that I've got the minor root in there too. Pattern 3, there's my minor root, or there's my major root. Pattern 4, there's my major root, or there's my minor root, and so on. All this will sink in over time. First thing you want to do is just familiarize yourself with the pentatonic patterns, get used to fingering and picking them and playing them. Then just learn how to play some of the simple little riffs and melodies that that I recommend. So you can see, oh, okay, that's how E minor pentatonic is used, or that's how C major pentatonic is used, or let me try that again. That's how A major pentatonic is used, or that's how F minor pentatonic is used. That's why I reference songs when I teach the pentatonic. I want you to connect the pattern to a familiar piece of music, and then go look it up and just learn a small portion of it. Just learn that simple riff or the melody or whatever so you can see how it's used. And then gradually over time, you stop looking at them as just patterns. You see them as pieces of music, and you know that, well, this is in minor and this is in major, and you see how the players will phrase around that minor root or phrase around that major root. By the way, I did get another reply from Dan after I answered him, and he said, I think I was blinded by believing I had to always start on string 6 no matter what the form was, but as you suggested, the same tonic pitches are within each pattern, so I don't have to start on the 6th string, but instead I can find the tonal center within each pattern, each form. Exactly. Okay, now we're moving on. Next message is from Scott, and he says, first off, I want to say that your method of teaching fretboard theory is far superior to anything else I have found, so thank you very much. You have a real knack for breaking things down and explaining them in simple, bite-sized chunks. I really feel like I'm close to having the aha moment when the whole fretboard mystery becomes unlocked. The question I have, however, is trying to find the arpeggios in the caged chapter. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The question I have is trying to finger the arpeggios in the caged chapter. They're difficult to reach as I have small hands. As long as I have the arpeggio patterns memorized, is it okay to finger partial voicings? Also, if I feel that I'm only 70% proficient with this concept, do you think it's okay to go on to Volume 2, Chapter 4? Or do you recommend that I learn 100% first? I look forward to your response, and thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. You can play partial shapes. You just want to familiarize yourself with the pattern so that you can see how the chord tones for a given chord are laid out on the fretboard. And once you get the basic idea, that's fine. So when you're playing those caged chord forms, for example, Here's C in the open position. C is the first chord form in the cage system, C, A, G, E, D. And the notes are C, E, and G. And we have more occurrences of those notes here in this open position than are part of a standard open C chord. For example, I can hold the G on top with my pinky. You want to know that that note is related. It's part of the chord. I can hold G on the 6th string. That's the 5th of the chord. Sometimes players will put that in the bass position. I can also play the open 6th string. That's E. That would be a first inversion where you put the 3rd in the bass position. Do stuff like... It's moving through some chord changes there. And so what I teach in fretboard theory with the caged chord system is how instead of just memorizing a chord shape, you want to know where all of the notes related to that chord are in a given position, and then memorize that whole pattern and learn how to play through all those notes low to high and high to low as if it were a scale pattern. So in this case, we're using the notes C, E, and G from the C chord, but I can actually start with E, G, then C, E, G, C, E, G. I can play that all in this position. And once I have that all mapped out, I can then grab those notes in any way I want to create different inversions and chord shapes and chord voicings. And I can do whatever is most comfortable for my hand. So Scott says he's got small hands, and sometimes he has difficulty fretting some whole chord shapes. Can he do partial chord shapes? Absolutely. Guitar players do that all the time. Yeah. Not only because it might be all they can handle with their fingers, but also because sometimes a smaller chord voicing, actually sounds good. Think about stuff like... That sounds great because it's using these smaller chord voicings and inversions. I don't want to play like the whole chords. And as you start moving around the neck, playing these arpeggio patterns that I teach, you don't have to play the whole chord forms. So for example, the C major chord is not too difficult to play in the open position. But imagine if you were going to move this up and play a bar chord. So your index finger is going to bar at the 2nd fret, as if it were a capo. Then you're going to use your remaining fingers 4, 3, and 2, to build a C chord shape. This is a big stretch, and it's difficult to do. It's good to understand that this is how chord forms work on the fretboard, and you can move around that C shape just like any other bar chord, and play major chords for any note along the 5th string. But you don't have to play the whole chord in its entirety. Most guitar players don't. You just want to visualize it, see that it's there. You want to know the whole arpeggio pattern that it comes out of. And then once you have all those notes mapped out, you can grab them in any way that you want, whatever's comfortable for your hands and whatever you think sounds interesting. Next, I've got a message here from Alan. He says, "Hey, Desi, just a thought to share. I don't play in a band, and guitar is just a fun hobby. I have been very guilty of being sucked down the gear rabbit hole, something I have discovered in part with your help, if focusing my energy on songs, not internet surfing for gear." I think what he meant to say is something I've discovered in part with your help is to focus my energy on songs, not internet surfing for gear. You mentioned towards the end of your fretboard theory course how you can take a song and analyze it, like what's the key, the parent major scale, and so on. So I'm going through your songs that you reference in your courses, and I do deep dives on each song. I learn the song, but I answer all those questions, which takes time for me to figure out. Then I deep dive into the tones and do my best to recreate them. I have a bunch of gear, including a Kemper profiling amplifier, so it's all there to find. I make a file for each song so I can reference back later on all the work involved. After I have enough songs, I'm going to mimic a live situation where I set up a playlist of songs, get the gear set up, and play them all through like an hour set or something. Anyway, it's fun and helps a lot with progress. Alan. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. I love that, Be intentional. Set a goal, like learn songs, understand them. Don't just memorize the tab. Understand, like, okay, what key am I in here? What's the basic progression? Why does the scale work over this? What scale am I in? You don't necessarily need to know all the details, but you should just kind of know the basics. It's going to make you a better musician. It's going to make it easier for you to pick up on songs next time. It's going to make it easier for you to remember what you've learned because you can put the pieces together like, oh, what key am I in? Oh, so it'd be this scale. Oh, that's where the solo starts. It'll help you be more creative if you later want to learn how to improvise or compose your own music. You'll know how things go together. And I love the idea that you're going to dial in the tones and everything, and you're going to pretend like you've got a gig coming up, and you're going to prepare like a professional guitarist would prepare. That's fantastic. That's very similar to what I was talking about earlier, where you want to go through that process. Like that's how you get good. So way to go, Alan. Love to hear that. Next, we hear from Steve, and he says, "Hey, Desi, the courses are going great. I completed the lessons, and so far it's so satisfying to be able to play songs. I'm using the approaches that you teach to learn some of the songs that interest me, such as John Denver songs. He mentioned Take Me Home, Country Roads. I'm having fun with power chord songs also. Although I've played power chord song parts before I started your lessons, since I just started having soreness in the muscle at the base of my thumb, the fleshy muscle used for the opposing thumb. Is this likely to be from squeezing too hard, or is it likely that my hand will get used to playing like this over time? When it kicks in, it's sore enough that it hurts to keep playing. It's like a cramp." He goes on to say, "I love your podcast on improvising. I loved your recent podcast on improvising, the one where you demonstrated with Tom Petty's Refugee. I'm going to try that out." So yeah, let's address this issue here. Discomfort in the hand as you're moving around the neck and playing different types of chords. You can play open chords in the open position. You can play bar chords. Play power chords. And some people find that as they're moving around the neck and playing more chords and songs and stuff, that their hands get sore. Obviously, if you're learning bar chords for the first time, that's going to be tricky. I don't recommend that you learn bar chords until after you get really good with open position chords. And I actually recommend that you work on playing power chord songs first, because power chords are kind of like little simplified bar chords. And you can learn some super simple songs that use power chords. You can gradually start, working your way around the fretboard. And once you master that and the techniques involved for playing power chord songs, then you're going to be more prepared for bar chords. It's not going to be quite as big of a leap. You've already strengthened your hands and conditioned your hands more. And when you do start on bar chords, I don't recommend that you go all in doing full bar chords right out of the gate. I think you're better off playing some simplified versions of them, where your index finger just has to maybe bar across a couple of strings. Play along with songs that way and get used to that, and then gradually add in more strings over time until eventually you're doing full bar chords. I've got a course where I train you how to do this and give you suggestions on how to play along with songs and what songs might be good to play along with and that sort of thing. So send me a message if you'd like me to send you information on that course. But anyway, let's see. So Steve here is dealing with some soreness and some issues with his thumb cramping. So Steve, what you're gonna have to just maybe try some different things. Can you finger those power chords differently? There's a couple different ways you can do it. If I'm playing a G power chord rooted on the 3rd fret of the 6th string, well, I at least need the G and I need the D on the next string, and I could fret that with my index and ring finger or my index and pinky finger. I could do my index and ring finger and then put my pinky on the 4th string, getting the octave G. So maybe you experiment with those options. Any one of them can work fine, and figure out what you're more comfortable with. Your thumb could be placed on the back of the neck. Maybe it's coming up along the side of the neck. Maybe you're wrapping it a little bit. I typically would bring the thumb back towards the back of the neck. If you're sitting down, maybe you're resting the guitar on your right leg, assuming you're right-handed. Maybe you actually want to elevate your left leg with like a guitar footstool or something and rest that guitar on your left leg. That's going to bring the headstock of the guitar up. Now the angle of the neck has changed, and this will change the angle of your wrist as you're reaching for the fretboard here, and that might alleviate some of the problem in your fingers or your thumb. You might use a guitar strap, stand up, adjust the height and position of the guitar. Maybe you can find a more comfortable, relaxed position that alleviates some of that tension. Maybe you're pushing down way too hard because you're playing on an acoustic guitar that's got thick strings and the action is too high. So maybe you want to lower the action on your guitar, get those strings as close to the frets as you can without getting excessive buzzing, and use extra light gauge of strings. Or playing on an electric guitar, so that you just have to apply a minimal amount of pressure to get those notes to ring, and that might help alleviate some of that discomfort in your hand also. All right, I've got time to answer one more question here, and this comes from Joe, and he says, hey, for your podcast, could you explain what is going on with all the chords and key changes for Muse's Knights of Cydonia? Well, let's take a listen. Okay, so at a glance, the first thing I hear is... So I immediately think E minor. I'm climbing up an E minor scale there. E, F sharp, G, A, B. That's a root, second, minor third, fourth, fifth. And it sounds like that's an E minor chord. So I got the root notes there. Now let's figure out, are the chords major or minor? So I immediately realize, I think this is that thing where you connect the 6th chord to a 1 chord, a relative minor to relative major, with inversion in between there like this. That'd be E minor, D/F sharp, G. But then for the A, I'm hearing those not as minor, which would be the key of E minor, but I'm hearing them as major. And maybe it's because I'm listening to the backing vocals in there. Let's see. So we got... Yeah. Those vocals. That's a C sharp during the A. That makes the A major. And then at the end there... not hearing a D sharp to make that major. It's kind of just a power chord. I don't know that I'm hearing a D in there, so that it would be minor. see if something else might indicate what that last chord is. Yep, so there's the D sharp in there. Did you hear that in the melody? So that is, in fact, a B major at the end. So that's... Or... maybe not the dominant seventh. Okay, well, this all makes sense to me. It's generally in the key of E minor. Well, what kind of E minor is it? Is it natural minor? Maybe it's a Dorian mode minor. Maybe it's harmonic minor. All of those are common. Maybe it's a little bit of both, which is what happens. Sometimes when you're in a minor key, it actually kind of pulls from different parallel minor scales, which is what's happening here. So that's natural minor, but then that A major, that'd be like the E minor Dorian. Major sixth in there, C sharp. That makes that A chord major. And then the B major at the end, well, that'd be E harmonic minor. I talked about that on the podcast recently. The raised seventh is that D sharp. All typical minor key stuff here. Sometimes when a song is in a minor key, it's not just going to use plain minor. It's going to use other types of minor scales and keys that are popular, like the harmonic minor, and in this case, a little bit of the Dorian mode also. That's Knights of Cydonia by Muse. That's just the first part of it. If you guys would like me to do a breakdown of this whole song and featuring it maybe in an upcoming episode of How Does This Song Work, send me a message. If I have enough people interested, I'll do it. All right, podcast episode 161 is a wrap. If you have questions you would like for me to answer in future Q&A episodes, just head over to my website, guitarmusictheory.com, scroll down and click on the contact link. And don't forget, while you're there, if you have not yet signed up for a free video course, answer that question I ask you about your playing, and I'll send you free custom video instruction that's calibrated to your current level. Whether you're a beginner, advanced player, or somewhere in between, I can put you on a plan so that you can become a better, more informed, skilled guitarist. You can move forward and you can reach your music goals. So enroll in your free course now at guitarmusictheory.com. You can click on the link in the podcast show notes. Don't forget that my books are sold on Amazon.com. You can find Fretboard Theory, Guitar Theory for Dummies, Guitar Picking Mechanics, and more. And I do have paid video courses on my website as well. If you've been subscribed for a while and tuning into the podcast, consider making a purchase. It'll not only make you a better guitar player, but it's how you can financially support this free content that I create. All right, guitar engineers, thanks for listening. I'm Desi Serna. Before you go, be sure to subscribe to this podcast, give it a 5-star rating, leave a comment if you can, then keep picking, and stay tuned for more.